Hi, everyone. The Partial Prophet here. Thanks for tuning in. So, I wanted to remind you that we know in part and we prophesy in part, and then when Jesus comes, we will see fully. Okay, so I just wanted to finish some of my thoughts on the prophetic shadows in the Super Bowl and Groundhog Day. So, this is part 2. So, let's get to the right screen here. Okay, so I was talking about. So I was at the verse where I wanted to talk about in Esther about the third day. And so I talked about how there was kind of this pattern of like 3 days, and a third day. Or like in Esther, it'd be kind of like if you think of 3 days, night and day, it'd be like 6 days, and then a third day. So what we're looking for, the next step that we're looking for is the third day. And so let's read these verses in Esther. It says, "Now it came about on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's rooms. And the king was sitting on his royal throne in the throne room, opposite the entrance to the palace. When the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, she obtained favor in his sight, and the king extended to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand. So Esther came near and touched the top of the scepter." So I see a connection with these verses to, okay, so when in the Joseph story, it talks about on the third day was Pharaoh's birthday. And then we know another birthday mentioned in scripture is Herod's birthday. And so on Herod's birthday, Herodias, his daughter-in-law, came, and she asked for John the Baptist's head on a platter. And so what we see, and also like in Esther's banquet, the king offered her up to half the kingdom. And so I think what we're seeing here in these verses, when the king extends to Esther the golden scepter, I think what we're seeing is a picture of, like, on the third day, someone is going to be given the opportunity to go into the inner court. And so, what that would be a picture of would be like on the third day, God is going to allow someone to attack Israel. And so I think that's what we're seeing in these verses. Okay, and so that would match up with the previous verses in Revelation where we see that war is the next step. And then also just a point about that too, there's multiple fulfillments. So then we're also going to see on the third day where Esther with her royal robes would be a picture of the church coming into the presence of the Messiah. Okay, so let me read these verses in Revelation. Revelation 16, this is talking about the gathering of kings. Okay. And so it says, "And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs, for they are spirits of demons performing signs, which go out to the kings of the whole world, to gather them together for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes, so that he will not walk about naked, and men will not see his shame. And they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Then the seventh angel poured out his bowl upon the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne, saying, 'It is done.' And there were flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder, and there was a great earthquake, such as there has not been since man came to be upon the earth. So great an earthquake was it, and so mighty. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And huge hailstones, all about 100 pounds each, came down from heaven upon men, and men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, because the plague was extremely severe." Okay, so I wanted to emphasize in these verses this picture of 3 unclean spirits coming out like frogs. And so one of the things that we know about frogs is they come out from the water. And so what we're kind of seeing is like um, the unclean spirits would be like lies, a connection to lies. And they come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. And so I'm wondering if the mouth of the beast would be Trump and the mouth of the false prophet would be Netanyahu. And so the lies that they are saying about the deal of the century are also causing unclean spirits to come out of the dragon or the people connected to the Antichrist, which would be a lot of like Israel's enemies. And so, because what we see with these demons is they go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. And so I think we see that now with the deal of the century. We see Israel's enemies all kind of like gathering together in unison with their hatred toward Israel and toward Trump and America because of the deal of the century. And so I wanted to show you a couple things from the news, where we see things happening to kind of prove that that's happening. Okay, so this is an article. It says ISIS in Sinai is close. We must be ready, says IDF battalion commander. So Lieutenant Colonel Aris Shabte, commander of the mixed gender Caracal battalion, says his forces can see ISIS cells in neighboring Egypt. He tells JNS of his battalion's readiness to keep the border secure and prevent potential killing sprees. Okay, so let me read the little caption. The Israel Defense Forces Mixed Gender Caracal Light Infantry Battalion prepares for threats from the Sinai. Through a range of combat drills designed to stop any surprise attack in its tracks and ongoing border. Okay, so this article came out February 4th. In recent days, an ISIS spokesman released a new audio message, which included a call for jihadist factions in the Sinai Peninsula and in Syria to step up attacks against Israel. ISIS also claims credit for blowing up a section of an Israeli-Egyptian natural gas pipeline in the Sinai. In Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, the Egyptian military has spent years battling a bloody ISIS insurgency, and while Cairo's offensive has notched up achievements, the global terror organization's Sinai branch remains active and dangerous. So what we see in this article is that, I mentioned this in my last video too, that ISIS, up to this point, ISIS didn't really pay attention to Israel and was attacking other people and stuff, but now all of a sudden with the deal of the century, it's caused them to start paying attention and wanting to attack Israel. And so then from the Times of Israel, this article is from February 6th, and it says 3 attacks in 12 hours, a day of violence, casualties in Jerusalem, West Bank. So it says 14 Israeli soldiers and cops wounded in attacks by Palestinian assailants, 2 Palestinian policemen killed by IDF, several clashes erupt amid tensions tied to Trump peace plan. Okay, so then the caption says, Israeli troops clashed with Palestinians during a manhunt in the West Bank town of Beit Java on February 6, 2020. So I just have part of the article. So it says, on Wednesday night, the Israeli army reported 2 mortar shells were fired from the Gaza Strip into Israeli territory at open areas. There were no reported casualties. Trump's Middle East plan. The incidents come as part of near daily exchanges along the Gaza Israel separation border after the announcement last week of U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed Middle East plan. Palestinians strongly rejected the plan, which promised a two-state solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and gave Israel an undivided capital in Jerusalem. Palestinian leaders and people have promised to fight against the deal. Okay, so ever since Trump has announced the plan, um, the clashes and everything have just been getting worse. So not good at all. Okay, and so then from Al Jazeera, and I was going to check on the date of this. But let me read this. Israel attacks Gaza again amid continued tensions over Trump plan. Incidents, once again it says, incidents come as part of near daily exchanges along separation fence after announcement of Trump's Middle East plan. Israeli aircraft struck Hamas positions in Gaza early on Thursday after Palestinians in the enclave launched projectiles and explosive, and I don't have the rest of the article. But this was also from February 6th. So not good at all. I did also want to mention, just so you can understand what Israel's enemies are like. One of the things that they've been doing is they have these sedentary devices. Like what they've been doing is connecting like bombs and other explosive devices to balloons. And one of the articles that I read is they'll actually put the devices in things like a soccer ball and stuff so they would be attracted to kids, like the colorful balloons and the soccer ball, or they put it in a book, and to attract kids. I mean, isn't that like sheer evil? And so the devices would explode, if people, touch them. So just sheer evil. This is, these are the enemies of Israel, what they're dealing with. So not good at all. Okay, so then I wanted to mention, so I want you to kind of understand what's going on. And I don't want you to fall into the tar pits. Okay, so that comes from the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fell into the tar pits. Okay, and so you don't want to follow them into the tar pits. Okay, and that would be Trump and Netanyahu. Okay, so let me read from 1 Thessalonians 5. It says, now, as to the times and epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you, for you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. While they are saying peace and safety, then destruction will come upon them suddenly like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day would overtake you like a thief. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober. For those who sleep do their sleeping at night, and those who get drunk at night. Okay, so we don't want to get drunk on the deal of the century or get drunk on Trump's State of the Union address, because if we're sober, we will realize that, one, with the deal of the century, it is not bringing peace to Israel. It's actually making things very bad for them. And with the State of the Union, too, we have to realize that we are not in a messianic era. God is very angry at America. And so we can't, just be thinking, hey, we're entering this great stage with Trump being president and we want 4 more years of this. Because if we are sober, we got to realize like how evil and wicked our nation has become. And so we're not moving into a messianic era. We are, God is angry at us. And so we need to be aware that judgment is around the corner. And then also too, so we want to be aware, that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. And so one of the things I want to propose is that Trump is the thief in the night. And so that comes from John 10, where it says, truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he is a thief and a robber. Okay, so So I think Trump did not enter by the door, and so the door would be, God's way into the fold of the sheep. But instead of following God and following the Holy Spirit, Trump climbed up some other way. And so he is a thief and a robber. It's not true peace for Israel. Um, and then I emphasize too in the First Thessalonians 5 about while they are saying peace and safety, um, and then it goes on to say, and they will not escape. Okay, so I propose that the they would be the two witnesses, which I think are Trump and Netanyahu, because they are the ones saying peace and safety. And so I mentioned that in the first part of this video. Um, okay, and so then in Second Thessalonians 2, it says, now we request you, brethren, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, that you not be quickly shaken from your composure or disturbed either by a spirit or a message or a letter as if from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. Do you not remember that while I was still with you, I was telling you these things? And you know what restrains him now, so that in his time he will be revealed. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. That is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, with all power and signs and false wonders, and with the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. For this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence, so that they will believe what is false, in order that they all may be judged who did not believe the truth, but took pleasure in wickedness. So I want you to see that we shouldn't be shaken from our composure, by a message as to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. So one of the examples would be we don't want to be shaken by the deal of the century and think that, peace has come to Israel. And then the other thing would be we don't want to be shaken by the message of the State of the Union from Trump. That makes it sound like we're in some great messianic era in America. Because if we, you know, um, if we recognize that we're in a wicked age, we will see that we aren't in a messianic era, you know. And then, I emphasize too, I thought it was kind of interesting where it talks about the man of lawlessness, the son of destruction, because I can see these verses applying to both Obama and Trump. And, because, I really think that, Obama kind of opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, and that he is taking his seat in the temple of God. Like, if you have the temple being, both Israel and America, we have Trump displaying himself, like he's a God making decisions for everybody, and then, and then it talks about the restrainer being taken out of the way so that the lawless one will be revealed. Um, so we know that, Obama's going to come back, and so he's definitely the lawless one too. And then it says, so one of the things that, I really wanted to emphasize in verse 11, it says, for this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence so that they will believe what is false. So I mentioned in my last video, part one of this video, the things that Netanyahu said about Trump and the deal of the century. I mean, the guy is delusional, if he really thinks that the deal of the century is a great thing and that Trump is really that great of a friend of Israel. And and so the people that are following Trump and following Netanyahu, they're delusional. God has sent upon them a deluding influence, And so what I, really think is that, um, you know, God talks about, um, the day of the Lord's not going to come until the apostasy comes first. And so I think, I definitely think there was an apostasy that happened during the time of Obama. And then now we're in another apostasy, because it's another group of people that need to be separated from God's people. Um, and so that's the stage that we're in. God is allowing Trump and Netanyahu, to reveal the hearts of people that, claim to follow God. Um, so, okay. And so, like I said, we have the sea of Obama, the sea of his lies on one side and the sea of Trump on the other side. Um, and so with his lies. And then in the middle, we have the dry land with Messiah, which would be no lies. There's no, sea of lies in the middle. And, so I read this off of the Chabad website, and it says, it was talking about the Red Sea, when Moses, separated this, God used Moses to separate the sea. And they wrote, as the sea split, the hidden world came to light. And so I really think that's what we're going to see when Messiah comes, is that the hidden world, God's people who are really hidden right now, are going to come to light. And so that's the end of my video. And so thank you so much for tuning in. So I hope you can see that, we're definitely nearing the end. I really think that Messiah is right at the door, and that, we just got to hang in there a little bit longer. I know it's rough, but just hang in there. Don't fall, like I said, don't fall into the tar pits with Trump and Netanyahu, but stay steadfast, on the Lord. Keep your eyes on the Lord and just hang in there. And so I want to thank you so much for listening. God bless, and have a good week.